everyone, and welcome back to the California Republican Party Convention in Anaheim, California. I am your host, Craig DeLuz, with CRATV. We're having a good time here at the convention, meeting with leaders from all across the state, people who are having an impact on the conservative movement. Right now, we have with us a gentleman who's running, who was, in my opinion, if you watched the speeches from the CRA convention, gave to me what was the best speech there. And is an individual who I definitely believe you need to hear from and should be our next treasurer, and that would be Mr. Jack Guerrero.
Thank you, Craig, for having me. It's a delight for me to be here.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you decide to run for treasurer.
I guess I'll start from the beginning chronologically. I was born and raised in the city of CRATV, which is in Los Angeles County, and the city where I subsequently served as mayor and city council member. My parents are immigrants from Mexico, hardworking, Hispanic, Catholic immigrants who were very poor when I was growing up, but very rich in terms of inculcating good, strong family values. I'm very blessed to have been raised by both my father and my mother in a loving Christian home, and it really informed a lot of the values that I carry into politics to this present day. I grew up in that town. I went to all of the local public schools, many of which were unfortunately decrepit and underperforming, and it's one of the reasons why I champion education reform as one of the key issues going forward in this election cycle. In fact, I think education reform is the next civil rights issue of our day. I went to Harvard Business School and Stanford University. I have degrees in economics. I'm a certified public accountant. I've worked for large global financial institutions in a number of finance and economic themed positions, which I think positions me very well for this area of California treasurer. And let me tell you, there's a lot of corruption that happens in state government, and I think the position of treasurer is one of those that is uniquely positioned to serve as a check and balance on a legislature run amok.
Oh, most definitely. Well, most definitely. I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges is that I find when it comes to policy is a lot of times when people are discussing, the legislature is discussing the policy, the real power is in the fiscal committees that make the decisions that determine where the money's going to be, whether it's the budget committee or the appropriations committee or whichever one it is. What do you see as major challenges facing California fiscally, not necessarily economically, but fiscally?
Yes, very good questions. And by the way, I do want to agree with your earlier outset comment that many people, ordinary voters, sometimes don't fully appreciate just how problematic the fiscal issue, the predicament of the state really is, because it's not something that is visible. It's not in front of the scene. It's mismanagement that happens behind the scene, which is why the treasurer position is so important. There are a number of issues that I like to raise awareness about. One of them that I speak very candidly about is pension reform. We've got a situation in the state of California where the unfunded pension liability, the difference between the promises or obligations that we have made to pensioners and the value of the assets present day, is about $1 trillion. That's the gap, which can be translated into debt. Now, for perspective, the size of the annual fund, the general fund for the state of California, hovers around $200 billion. So if you do the math, it means that we could not shut down government for 5 years straight and tax you several times over and recover from this gap. In my opinion, this is the single greatest threat to the fiscal stability of the state. I have been very active about raising awareness. Unfortunately, a lot of politicians, including Republicans, I'm afraid to say, are afraid of challenging the public sector union bosses about reasonable reforms in this area. I have long championed a three-tiered approach to resolving this issue. Number one, all new government employees should migrate immediately to a defined contribution plan. All existing retirees should have their pension promises fulfilled to the extent economically feasible, and those in the middle who are current workers should have their deferred compensation earned to date honored, but anything prospective should be renegotiated as well to a plan that is a lot more reasonable. Another issue that's important for the Treasurer's Office is the state's credit rating, and that's a function of the state's fiscal management. Right now we're at AA negative, which puts us, although investment grade, in the bottom 20% of states across the United States. That's important. That relative comparison is important because we're competing with investors throughout the country for funds to meet almost lockstep the financial largesse of the California legislature. And when our credit rating is relatively unattractive, it means we pay more interest, it means we pay more transaction costs, and who benefits from those schemes? Wall Street bankers in New York City, to the detriment of California taxpayers. That is completely unacceptable. As treasurer, I will testify before every legislative committee that deals with finance, every occasion, every budgetary cycle, until the truth can be widely disseminated.
And that's vitally important because, I mean, you're talking, that affects billions of dollars every year
That's
that
right.
are going down the drain because we're basically, what we're doing is we're paying more.
Yes,
Right?
that's right.
And if we're borrowing money, we are in fact paying more.
That's right.
And you know, basically what it's saying is California's not a good risk. Sadly, we should be a better risk.
That's right. That's right.
But that's not the case. So, what do you believe are what's your evaluation of the job that the current state treasurer is doing?
Very unfavorable rating. In fact, we've got a treasurer who has a history of dabbling in constitutionally questionable endeavors. For example, the current treasurer has talked about creating a new state bank run by government bureaucrats. I mean, anything government touches that already has a counterpart in the private sector that operates a lot more efficiently, a lot more cost effectively, is just a bad idea. And so the current treasurer has talked a lot about that. The treasurer has also written or authored legislation in Sacramento to force workers in the private sector who otherwise don't have access to retirement plans with their employers into government-run IRAs. Now, we already have IRA programs in the private sector. Why does the government need to meddle and introduce similar programs at greater cost, lower inefficiency, lower return? It makes absolutely no sense. So we've got a treasurer who's dabbling in things that have absolutely no constitutional authority for the treasurer.
Well, it's funny because we already have a government-run quote-unquote retirement plan called Social Security, and guess what? They're not doing a very good job. They are literally robbing Peter to pay Paul.
That's right, with the greatest inefficiency you can imagine. And it's afflicting the state of California. We need really somebody who can stand up to the legislature, serve as a check and balance. And you know, I've been in government now for the last few years, and I have observed over the course of that time that there are two fundamental qualities that a good elected official needs to possess. Number one, they need to be ethical. That's really important. We want honest politicians who will tell the truth to taxpayers and constituencies. But the other important criteria is somebody who's competent, somebody who understands the technical aspects of the job. It's simply not good enough to just be ethical or have the right disposition to do the job from a moral perspective. You need to understand the mechanics of the role. And this is where I think my background can be very useful, both in terms of the political experience, but also my private sector experience working with finance, economics, and related topics.
For folks who are interested in supporting your campaign, how do they support you? How do they find you?
The easiest way is to go to my website, www.jackfortreasurer.com, with the digit 4 in the middle. So Jack, the digit 4, treasurer.com. And if I could close with just one other comment, perhaps this can be inspiring to some of the people throughout the state that maybe are thinking about running for office but are disillusioned because they live in Democratic strongholds. My city is 98% Hispanic and 90% Democrat. Against that backdrop, I have launched my campaign and re-election cycles and have consistently been elected as the top vote getter in the recorded history of my city. And the reason for that is because I'm able to channel issues that resonate with ordinary people. We can do that as Republicans. We don't have to compromise on values, and we can win. I want to replicate that same model on a broader scale, and I think this platform for state treasurer can help me do that.
Well, you know what? I would 100% agree with you. I sit on a school board in an area that's largely Democrat, and have been sat on that school board for 17 years. And really what it is, it's not about walking around with a big R on your chest. It's about governing according to your values.
That's right.
It's about, like you said, being competent, being ethical, focusing on the job that you're supposed to be doing.
That's right.
Well, folks, this is definitely a candidate that you guys need to be getting behind. You need to be supporting. I'm just going to tell you right now, if you think there's a better candidate, you don't know Jack.
Thank you.
I'm just saying.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much for coming on the
My
program.
great pleasure.
And good luck to you, and thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
All right,
that.
sir.
Thanks.
All right, folks, that's going to be it for this edition of CRATV. But hey, the convention is just getting started, so we'll be back with more interviews from party leaders, party officials, people running organizations, people who are having an impact on the conservative movement. With all of that, talk to you again real soon.